Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Path of Exile 2. I was watching the Talkative Tri podcast yesterday, at least, a little bit of it, and they were talking about the endgame and some of the things that they would like to see changed about the endgame, or more specifically, what they felt was wrong about the existing endgame. And since I've kind of been on a kick lately about just talking about the game rather than going through gameplay, I figured I'd throw my 2 cents into the pot and talk about what I think about the end game as well. Now, one of the things that they were talking about specifically, at least, he was talking to Kaltorek and Miso Shiru, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't really know. But they had a couple of different opinions. One side of the argument was that they really liked the Path of Exile 1 style of having just a limited set of maps that you just completed, and then after that you could just pick which zones you wanted to go into and all of that. And to some extent I can kind of agree with that position. It's nice to just kind of be able to pick the maps that you want to do and only do those. I think that I understand where they're coming from, but I don't necessarily like that approach, particularly because I want to feel like I'm on an adventure when I play a game like this. And when you have a very specific set of maps that you choose from and that's all you get, you don't really feel like you're going anywhere. You're just, oh, let's dive into this map again. Oh, let's dive into this map again. Let's dive into this map again. And while, yes, there are certain maps on the Atlas tree here that I don't necessarily like going to, there's something about the feeling of traveling over land that makes the end game feel like you're doing something. Now, obviously, people who have a super optimized mindset about how to, go through the end game loop are not going to like the randomness of how the different zones appear and where you're going. You do have a fair amount of control over which maps you're going to get into by, choosing terrain that makes sense based off of the kinds of maps that you want to do. But there is a lot of randomness in, within this particular terrain here, which maps you're actually going to get. And there's just some maps that you're going to like, and there's some maps that you're really not going to like. And there's a lot of people out there who just want to be able to pick the specific maps that they want, and that's totally understandable. That said, for me, I actually do really like this infinite atlas that they've done, because it makes me feel like I'm going on an adventure. It makes me feel like I'm journeying somewhere, rather than just teleporting into some esoteric map that exists in some dimension somewhere, the way it feels in Path of Exile 1. Because when you have the Atlas in Path of Exile 1 and you're looking at the very specific limited list of maps, you don't feel like you're going anywhere. You just feel like you're teleporting into a space. And while, yeah, it's the same thing here, you're teleporting into a space on the map here, and then you're teleporting back. The visual here at least gives you a sense that you're traveling in a direction. You're not just teleporting to some, a disconnected place that you don't have any kind of feeling about. You're just, you're actually traveling across a map. And that's what it makes it feel like when you're doing it this way. Now, providing a little bit more agency for players to allow them to, I don't know how you would logically provide some kind of way of making it so that certain things become different maps. This spawned as a rupture, which means that the entire world is spawning in a certain way, and giving the ability to change this into something else. You would need, I guess once you get to the end game, you could justify it by saying you have access to powerful magic that allows you to reshape the world. I guess you could do something like that, but you would have to have some kind of very specific and very powerful magic items that allows you to do that, because you're basically recreating reality by changing this from a rupture into a sump or whatever specific maps that you want. So as far as the Infinite Atlas, I think that the idea of this is very good for those of us who don't want a very limited set of maps, and then B, a very disconnected feeling from the world that you're supposed to be doing your adventuring in. The Atlas system here just makes you feel a little bit more connected to the world that you're participating in, rather than just the other Atlas where it's a vague map and you teleport into these zones. And yeah, the zones are cool, but they're just zones. They're not part of the world. And this makes you feel like you're part of the world. So that's my thought on the whole Atlas thing. I will say that I do agree with all of their more or less statement that the benefits that you get from the Atlas points that you put into this really don't feel like you're actually getting anything out of it. And what I mean by that is that me personally, I have invested heavily into ritual. And most of my stuff is set up so that, obviously I'm trying to find, waystones and stuff like that, but really trying to get into figuring out ritual and all of that. Where's my ritual? Yeah, I have all the points for ritual, and I did my best to try to like set it up so that I would get the most benefit out of it. But what I really need is, some way of skewing the odds in my favor that ritual tablets will drop. And if you look at my stash tab here, I have lots and lots of the regulars and the overseer ones, and I only have this guy here as far as a ritual tablet. And I just need the ability to get more without having to buy them, because people want a lot for the tablets compared to what I believe that they're worth. Now, that's my personal opinion. Other people will have different opinions, but it would be really nice if the Atlas tree included a way to make it so that, I have a higher chance of dropping certain types of tablets so that I can, keep on top of that and then insert those things. I think one of the better things that they did was switching it so that the tablets that you have, you're not only going to get the mechanics in the map that your tablet has. Like, there's going to be some variety in it. I think that's a good idea because, I haven't had my Atlas tree is heavily invested in ritual, and I want to be able to get all of the benefits of that, but then I'm not getting the tablets that I need. So it's nice when a ritual pops up, I can actually get some of the benefit of it. But it would be really nice if we could start honing the chances of our drop rates, giving us things that we need, like ritual tablets. And so it would be really nice if they adjusted the tree in a way that made it so that not only can add some things in here that give you a higher chance of actually dropping ritual things here. Like make the first one of these maybe, a 25% increased chance of dropping this specific thing. Like each one of these could have something that skews the odds of that particular type of precursor tablet dropping in your favor for that, rather than it just being completely random and then the only things you get are regular ones and overseer ones, because you're always fighting bosses, right? You're always fighting bosses. You're always going to, like, when you find them, you're going to get an overseer tablet. But when you do the rituals, they don't necessarily consistently drop those. And so we just need something that allows you to kind of hone what you want and actually get that. I think that would be a really good thing. I think also that I don't feel like, I agree with their position that the points that you get that you put in your Atlas tree, they don't really feel like it bumps anything up significantly. Like I have all of these things where I have increased pack size and I have increased rarity and, I have increased rarity of waystones and all of these things where I'm bumping up the chance of something cool dropping. And it just doesn't seem like I'm getting a lot out of that. I agree with the idea that it probably needs to be, some of these things probably need to be changed and affected. Now, the problem that we're going to have with that is that, unfortunately, the developers are really married to this idea that your gear also needs to have some kind of rarity component. Like, you're supposed to sacrifice stats that you need to actually fight the monsters you're supposed to sacrifice a stat on each piece of your gear that you're supposed to be using to make yourself stronger to fight monsters, to make yourself more lucky so that you find things. And I'm like, there's a lot of people that really don't like that idea, and I'm in that camp. I really don't like the idea that I'm supposed to give up part of my gear's effectiveness in order to skew the odds a little bit more in my favor. I would really much rather that be a component of the precursor tablets and the waystones that we're doing. Like, if you want to have rarity be a thing, which I really don't think should be, I think it should just be, give us really high chances of things to drop as a baseline. I prefer that, but whatever. If you want rarity to be a thing, I think take it off the gear and just make the precursor tablets and the waystones themselves increase their rarity to compensate for what someone would be doing to have all of that on their gear. Because it's an unreasonable ask, in my opinion, to require somebody to give up especially once you start getting towards the end game, requiring somebody to give up an entire slot on a piece of gear in order to, have a higher chance of, decent things dropping. I don't think that's a good way to go. I think it gives people are always looking to maximize their gear. They're always wanting to, get as strong as they can be, and requiring them to compromise on that in the hopes of getting, you know, better drops is just, it doesn't feel good. It really, really doesn't feel good. I understand the idea that the developers are always trying to do a give and take kind of thing, and they want to have friction and all of that stuff, but there are certain things where the take feels way worse than the give. And I think this is one of those things. You know, if you want to get a decent level of rarity on your gear, at the very least, you're going to have to sacrifice a slot on several pieces of gear to get to a decent level of rarity. And those are slots you could be putting on things that actually make your character meaningfully more powerful. And it sucks to have to give that up just so you can have a slightly higher chance of decent stuff dropping. I don't think that's a good thought process. It's my opinion, but, you know, that's how I feel about it. So, yeah, I think a couple of things in the endgame could be changed so that, you know, people are able to have a little bit more impact from the points that they're getting for their Atlas tree, to make it so that, you know, you feel like when you... I agree with their point where they say when you put a point in, you want to feel like that point actually does something, and it doesn't. You know, even with all the points that I put in, I only feel a marginal difference from when I started doing maps, when I started all of this. And then B, the infinite Atlas thing, I think it's a good idea. I think it's the way we should go. But I do recognize people's criticism of it in that, you know, some people want to do specific types of maps and they don't necessarily want to have to like navigate through the world to do that. I don't know that there's a good compromise there. For those of us who want it to feel like an adventure, you know, it needs to kind of be the way that it is. And for those people who really want it to be more like Path of Exile 1, where there's just a list of maps and you pick the ones you want to do, it's just not going to be your cup of tea no matter what they do with it. And I don't know, maybe there's a creative solution that they can come up with that satisfies both parties, but me personally, I hope they stick with what they have now. I really enjoy the adventure part of it. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully you guys found something useful out of that. Hit that like button, subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. If you'd like to contribute to my channel, I do have PayPal and Patreon links in the video description, as well as the thanks button just below the video itself. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.